Today we're going to take a look at 12 perennial varieties that bloom multiple times throughout a season. Hi, I'm Heidi from Garden Crossings, and we're going to show you some tips and tricks today on how to get these wonderful perennials to give you color as long as the season goes on, starting early summer and well into the fall. So let's go ahead and take a look at these 12 great long blooming perennials. Nepeta, it's a great landscape perennial. You'll find a lot of times in landscape designs, this is a go-to plant that the landscapers love to use. And the reason why is because Nepeta bloom nearly all summer long. There are a few tips and tricks on how to get this to continue to bloom. So basically you can see this Nepeta here. This is cat's pajamas. This is a very compact growing Nepeta, and I love to use this one in the landscape because I always like to look for just those nice short varieties that don't necessarily flop over. And this Nepeta is an excellent landscape variety. So right now it's just starting to come into bloom. You can start to see just a little bit of flower going on. There's a lot of buds, and this plant is looking really great. Well, once these flowers and the buds that are on this plant start to kind of fizzle and fade, what we recommend doing is coming through and just taking about a third or even a half of the plant off. Basically just enough to remove any of those spent blooms that are on. This is going to encourage more branching, which means more flowers, and also more flowers. This will bloom 2, 3, 4 times a season, as long as you kind of keep it up and remove any of those spent blooms. Some of you might be saying, oh, that's too much work, I don't want to do that. And that's fine. If you don't trim it, you will still get a little bit of a rebloom, but you're going to find a much fuller, fresher, nicer rebloom if you are able to just go out and lightly trim it every now and then as you feel like the flowers are starting to fade. Nepeta are hardy, depending on the variety, from zones 3, which is pretty cold, up to zone 9. So this really is a great plant for most of the area of the country. It likes to be grown in a full sun area of the garden. So that's one thing that I think is important to really keep it blooming and doing its best. And another thing why a lot of landscapers likes to use the Nepeta is because it's also drought tolerant. So for those of you who maybe don't have a sprinkler system or just, aren't able to always get out and give the water to the plants that they need, this is a drought tolerant variety and grows well not only in landscapes but in rock gardens as well. And the last thing with Nepeta that makes it such an excellent choice for not only the long blooms that last throughout the summer, it's also deer and rabbit resistant. So really, I think Nepeta is an excellent choice for landscapes and gardens. Starting to bloom midsummer, lavender is another great reblooming perennial and fragrant. Oh, it smells so amazing. This one here is part of our Bloomables line, and it's the super blue lavender. It's a very compact variety, only gets 10 to 12 inches tall and wide, so it creates just a nice tight mound. So with lavender, you can see this one here, it's just starting to come into bloom, and there's so many flowers and so many flower buds on it. So for its compact size, it's gonna boast a lot of color. When these flowers that are just starting here now are done and have faded, you can give it a light trim, just removing any of those spent blooms. And by doing that, by giving it just a light trim, that's going to encourage a second flush of flowers. Now, lavender is hardy in zones 4 to 9, depending on the variety. And lavender does like to be grown in a full sun location with good drainage. It's drought tolerant, so if you have, soil that maybe is a little bit drier or sandier, or just doesn't hold a lot of water, lavender would feel most at home in that type of soil situation. It's quick to grow, and as I mentioned, very fragrant. Sometimes I like to trim the blooms just to create a little sachet that I can hang up in my bathroom or in my closet, just to get that nice lavender scent. Another nice thing with lavender is if you have deer or rabbits in your garden, this is a deer and rabbit resistant plant, so you don't need to worry about those critters enjoying the blooms more than what you will. Dianthus are another great reblooming perennial. I love this Paint the Town series. This one is actually Paint the Town Fancy. It's got these beautiful pink and magenta blooms. So this Dianthus is going to bloom really prolifically earlier on in the season. For us here in Michigan, we find that its most prolific bloom is in May, and we have it where we use it as borders or toppings to our rock walls, just to create a huge mass of color that really draws your eye into the garden. When these blooms are finished flowering this first cycle, you'll simply just trim them off and watch for reblooms as the summer goes on. Now, this one here is just starting to come into flower here in the greenhouse. So this is not even a great indicator of just how many flowers this plant can produce. And they're fragrant. They smell absolutely lovely. Dianthus are hardy in zones 4 to 9. They like to be planted in full sun to part shade locations. As mentioned, low growing borders, they're really a great plant for creating that mass of color at the front of your garden spaces. Also, Dianthus are a nice drought tolerant plant. So if there's areas in your garden that maybe you don't get enough water to, this is a plant that does thrive once it's established in areas of the garden that don't get as much water as what maybe other areas do. Another nice thing with Dianthus is if you're looking for something that's deer resistant, this is a plant that deer are going to tend to stay away from. So one of the most surprising perennials I have ever planted in our garden, that is the longest blooming, the most prolific blooming plant ever, is Dicentra pink diamonds. So when I first saw this plant, I was like, oh, why is it planted in full sun? Typically, bleeding heart are a shade-loving perennial, but the Dicentra pink diamonds actually is a perennial that loves to be grown in the full sun, and it is a hard-working perennial, non-stop blooms all summer long. Usually here in Michigan, we'll see it start blooming somewhere around the end of April, and it is blooming well into the fall. Deadheading or trimming, none of that is needed. Literally, we plant the plant and we don't have to do any trimming or any maintenance to it all summer long. It just continues to put on these beautiful clusters of pink flowers that they do not stop. Another nice thing with those flowers is they have a nice complementary foliage that goes along with them as well. It's kind of a fern leaf looking foliage, blue-green in color, so it's a perfect pair between foliage and flowers. They're hardy in zones 3 to 9. They're very compact, only 12 to 16 inches tall, in about a 16 to 18 or so inches wide clump. So just a nice mounding, short perennial. They're also deer resistant, and I'm glad I'm able to touch on a lot of the deer resistance in these plants we're talking about today, because I feel like that's really a trigger for a lot of people, is looking for deer resistant plants. So if you're able to get a long blooming perennial added in with deer resistance, I feel like that's always a plus. And I want to let you know of a new color that's in this Dicentra series. So right now, Pink Diamonds is the one we're showing you in the video. It's paired with some gorgeous hydrangeas, our little lime punch hydrangeas, along with, we have petunias in front of it and some corbels. It's a great front of the border plant if you're looking for something that just always is in bloom. But the new variety we have for this year is White Diamonds. And White Diamonds is a lot like the Pink Diamonds, with just those small, bleeding heart looking blooms. Here's the beautiful blue-green foliage on it. You can see how it's very fern-like looking. And it's kind of a, I don't know, a succulent-ish feel to it. And I think that's part of the reason why this is deer resistant, because they don't like the texture of this plant when it's in their mouth. So if you are looking for a very hardworking perennial that is a non-stop bloomer from the beginning of summer well into the fall, Dicentra Pink Diamonds, or now a new one, White Diamonds, you've got to check that one out. Another landscaper favorite is the Geranium Rozanne. This is a hardy geranium, and it is a non-stop bloomer as well. It starts blooming in June and will bloom clear until the fall. It's hardy in zones 4 to 8 and likes to be grown in full sun to part shade locations. Geranium Rozanne creates a 1 to 2 foot mound, so just a nice mounding habit, and just a mass of these beautiful purple flowers that continue to bloom throughout the summer. If you feel like your Geranium Rozanne is starting to kind of maybe not have as many blooms as what it had previously, just go into the plant, and we recommend taking about a third of the plant and just trimming it off. And when I'm using my fingers here to show you, I'm not paying attention to like, where am I trimming? No, you just go in and take a third of that plant off, and what that's going to do is that's going to encourage more growth, and more growth results in more branching. The more branching you're creating, the more flowers you're going to have. So perennial Geranium Rozanne, if you just keep it trimmed after it's done flowering, maybe 2-3 times a summer, it's just going to reward you with blooms that just consistently go until later in the fall. They can handle being planted in clay soil as well. So if you've got, nice rich soil, great plant. But if you've got clay soil that's sometimes tricky and hard to work with, this is a plant that will do just fine in that type of location. Also, it's another deer and rabbit resistant perennial, and I think that's part of the reason why the landscapers like to use it. Anything that's easy for a gardener to grow. Bulls Me Away Wallflower. This plant it's a beautiful plant. Last year was the first year we grew this, and I really didn't know what to expect of it. We had it planted out in our Bloomables garden, which was a new garden we planted last year, and this plant really put on a show all summer long. If the flowers start to fade a little bit, we just went through and just gave it a light trim, and it was back to blooming within no time. It's hardy in zone 6 to 8 and likes to be planted in full shade to part shade locations. Although I'm going to say ours was in our full sun garden and it did fantastic all summer long. It's also a deer resistant variety, so a lot of great attributes there. And something we're excited about is we're going to have more colors of this available in the future. Shades of yellow, whites, oranges, and even pinks. So if you're looking for something that's going to really just be a long bloomer and really put on a fantastic show that has a wide range of color, these wallflowers are something I would highly encourage you to try planting in your gardens. I feel like daisies are a favorite of many gardeners, and they're also another long blooming perennial. So Shasta daisies are really known for their iconic white blooms with that yellow center. This one here is slightly different. This one is the marshmallow, part of the Amazing Daisy series, and it's got a really nice full frilly looking flower. Shasta daisies will bloom usually around midsummer or so with just a beautiful prolific canopy of blooms. Once those flowers fade, go ahead and give them a light trim back, and that's going to encourage some rebloom. Now I said some rebloom. Some varieties of Shasta daisies will rebloom better than others. In fact, one that we really enjoy is the Daisy May. Daisy May has an excellent rebloom to it. And not only is the first cycle of flowers just gorgeous, the second cycle of flowers is equally as gorgeous with just a full canopy of blooms. Shasta daisies like to be planted in zones 5 to 9, and they like to be grown in a full sun location. The more sun they have, the more flowers you're going to be able to enjoy. We're showing you different pictures of them around our waterfall garden here at Garden Crossings, and these are Daisy May, and they do fantastic and really put on just beautiful summer color. Also in our Bloomables garden, we have a new variety called Whitecap, and that too has just been equally impressive to us here, and it's bloomed several times throughout the summer here in our gardens. So if you're looking for a great plant variety that has a little of an iconic feel to it, very recognizable in a garden, Shasta daisies are a beautiful addition to our reblooming collection. We really were impressed with the reblooming qualities of our uptick Coreopsis planted last year in our Bloomables garden. Really no deadheading was needed, and those things just continued to bloom throughout the summer. Now I will say if you do want to go through and deadhead them, it will keep them a little bit tidier looking, and maybe if you want to kind of keep a certain shape, you can go through and do some deadheading, but it's not needed to keep those flowers blooming all summer long. The thing I like about the uptick series is there's a lot of color variation as well. There's yellows, there's reds, there's mix of yellow and reds, and there's just solid reds. It's really kind of a range of yellow, orange, red. So a lot of different variations of those warm colored flowers to add into the garden. Coreopsis are hardy in zones 5 to 9. They do like to be grown in a full sun location. So if you're looking to have these beautiful warm color blooms throughout the summer that are deer resistant, check out our Coreopsis Uptick series for a fantastic mounding habit plant to add into the garden. One of my favorite perennials in my garden are the Peruvian lilies. If you have watched any videos of mine, especially my home garden tours, I am always talking about my Inca Ice Peruvian lily. I have to put a little asterisk there. That one is no longer available, but there are a lot of other great options of Peruvian lilies or Alströmerias on the market right now. So this is a great plant for cut flowers. The flowers will last up to 2 weeks in a vase. And actually, we're calling them a cut flower, but when you go to harvest these flowers for your vases, we actually recommend not trimming them at all. It's very easy, and I'm not going to be able to show you because this one is just a little quart-sized container, but out in the landscape, it's very easy to pull the thick stem with the flowers on it right out of the plant. That's the most healthiest way of cutting the Peruvian lilies. These do last 2 weeks in a vase, so if you're looking for something that just continues to look beautiful indoors, this is a great plant. Now let's talk hardiness of these Peruvian lilies. A lot of the varieties are hardy down to zone 6 and go up to zone 10. But it is very important that you are paying attention to the hardiness of these plants because there's a lot of variation. So right now we have a lot of the Inca series that we grow here at Garden Crossings, and they're hardy in zone 7 or 8 up to zone 10. Now that being said, I have been able to get many of these to overwinter in my zone 6 garden. It's not a guarantee, but definitely it's something worth trying. But even so, if I was growing these Peruvian lilies just as an annual in my garden, the display and show of color they give from like May until the first hard frost is just unbelievable. And hard frost for us in Michigan sometimes is October. They just keep rewarding me with more and more flowers as the summer goes on. So if you're looking for a hardworking perennial, depending on your zone, or an annual, definitely Peruvian lilies are very hardworking and will reward you with a lot of flowers. And as you see here, I have not talked about needing to trim or deadhead these things to keep them blooming. You literally don't have to touch these plants and they will just continue to reward you with flowers all summer long. Here's a great pollinator plant to add to your garden that also blooms all summer long. Agastache, also known as hyssop, comes in a wide variety of colors. There's pinks and reds and oranges and yellows, and it's a beautiful, fragrant perennial. So it's great for those pollinators with its tubular blooms. The hummingbirds and the butterflies, they love to visit the Agastache. It can be planted in full sun locations to part shade locations, and depending on the variety, it can get 1 to 3 foot tall. Also too, you're going to want to watch your zones a little bit. So some varieties of Agastache can go down to zone 5 and then up to zone 9. So for us here in Michigan, there's a lot of Agastaches that do really well for us. We planted a ton of them out in our bloomables garden this past summer, and they just continued to put on a show day after day, week after week, and month after month. We did very little trimming to these because really no trimming was needed. Even when the flowers started to fade, there was more flowers just quickly there to replace any of the faded blooms. Agastache is a drought tolerant perennial and is deer resistant and also rabbit resistant due to its fragrance. That's one tip when you're looking for those deer resistant plants, is anything that's fragrant or fuzzy or has fine foliage. Agastache is also a great perennial that can be used in container designs. Mix it with some of your favorite annuals for using it as the thriller in the center of the combination, or mix it in with some other very nice long blooming perennials. It's going to be hard to decide just which color Agastache you're going to want to add to your garden. I love coneflowers or Echinacea in my garden, and to be honest, I try to collect like one of every variety. Echinacea is such a long blooming perennial, and it comes in such a vast array of colors that it's really pretty to just make a coneflower garden if that's something that you like to do. So Echinacea are hardy in zones 4 to 8. They like to be grown in full sun locations. They're also drought tolerant once they're established. So with Echinacea, they're going to bloom usually around midsummer or so. And if the flowers start to fade, you can give them a light trim, and sometimes they'll reward you with additional blooms later on in the season. Those later on in the season blooms, I recommend not trimming those off, because Echinacea is a great plant for attracting those beautiful songbirds to the gardens. I know in the fall when I see the little yellow finches hanging all out on my Echinaceas, it's so pretty and fun to watch. Echinaceas come in a lot of different flower forms as well. So you have your single flowers, which is just, your cone with the petals around it. And they also come in a double flower form as well, which is a big frilly center, again, with the petals all around it. For color ranges, there's pinks, there's reds, there's yellows, there's oranges, there's whites, there's even green Echinacea, which is kind of the craziest looking flower ever. But if you're looking to add something really different and unique to the garden, those green cone flowers are just, they're very different and fun. The other thing I like about coneflowers is they're another great deer-resistant perennial variety. So if deer are an issue, coneflowers should be a plant that they do tend to stay away from. And if you're somebody that just doesn't know what you're doing when you're planting out a garden and are looking for something that is just super simple and easy, daylilies are an excellent go-to. There are a lot of varieties of daylilies on the market, and we have a few of our favorites that are rebloomers. Daylilies are hardy in zones 3 to 9 and like to be grown in full sun locations. So what are some of our favorite reblooming daylilies? Let me tell you. Born to Run, Double Pardon Me, Orange Smoothie, Happily Ever After Red Hot returns, Rosie returns, Sound of My Heart, and Star of the North. One thing you'll find is there's a vast array of colors with the various daylilies I mentioned. And daylilies, some of them have really large flowers and some of them are smaller flowers. So if you're looking for the big blooms of Born to Run or the smaller varieties of the Rosie returns, there's a perfect size reblooming daylily for your garden and landscape. So if it's a new garden you're starting or a mature garden you already have, hopefully this list of 12 perennials that bloom multiple times a season help you with creating the perfect garden with blooms all summer long. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below. If you're new to our channel, we welcome you to subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'm Heidi from Garden Crossings.